Target Blog News Media Publications. Episode 1, Global News Briefing, President Trump as State Visit to Beijing. Date, May 14, 2026, Beijing. President Donald Trump is completing a three-day state visit to China that began Wednesday evening, May 13. He was received at the Great Hall of the People with a 21-gun salute and a formal welcome ceremony. The visit, which ends Friday, May 15, aims to reset bilateral ties toward what President Xi Jinping called constructive strategic stability. Corporate delegation. Trump brought a large delegation of U.S. business leaders, whom he described as America's best representatives, and urged expanded U.S. commercial engagement in China. Notable attendees include Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX; Tim Cook, Apple; Jensen Huang, Nvidia; Larry Fink, BlackRock; Stephen Schwarzman, Blackstone; David Solomon, Goldman Sachs; Jane Fraser, Citigroup; Kelly Ortberg, Boeing; H. Lawrence Culp Jr., GE Aerospace; Cristiano Amon, Qualcomm; Sanjay Mehrotra, Micron; Dina Powell McCormick, Meta; Michael Miebach, MasterCard; Ryan McInerney, Visa; Brian Sykes, Cargill; Jacob Thaysen, Illumina; Jim Anderson, Coherent. Venues and visits. The trip mixed formal diplomacy with cultural pageantry in central Beijing. Great Hall of the People, site of official talks and the morning welcome ceremony. Tiananmen Square, arrival honors and military salute. Temple of Heaven, afternoon tour, including the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests. Forbidden City, Palace Museum, referenced in remarks recalling the President as 2017 visit. Talks and takeaways. Leaders described their exchanges as frank and forward-looking, centered on a framework of constructive strategic stability intended to keep competition contained while managing differences. Major topics included: 1. Artificial intelligence. Both sides discussed the idea of formal red lines and safety standards, likened by some participants to Cold War-era arms control thinking. 2. Taiwan. She reiterated that Taiwan is a core red line. Trump addressed a recent $11 billion U.S. arms package for Taiwan, while stressing a preference for reduced tensions and regional stability. 3. Global security and energy. The war in Iran and its effects on energy markets and maritime trade, especially the Strait of Hormuz, figured prominently in discussions about stabilizing global commerce. 4. Economic access. Trump pressed Xi to further open China as markets to U.S. firms, arguing greater commercial cooperation would benefit both economies. Tonight, the president will attend a state banquet. Friday's agenda includes a final working lunch before departure. Compiled by Christian Church World News CCWN TV Press Media. Copyright 2026 CCWN TV Press Media. All rights reserved.
Target Blog News Media Publications. Episode 2, Global News Briefing, Trump's high-stakes state visit to Beijing underway. Date, May 14, 2026. Beijing, China. President Donald Trump is in Beijing for a three-day state visit aimed at recalibrating U.S.-China relations during his second term. The president arrived on Wednesday evening, May 13, and was received with full military honors, including a 21-gun salute and an elaborate welcome ceremony at the Great Hall of the People. The visit, scheduled to run through Friday, May 15, is framed by both sides as an effort to steer the bilateral relationship toward what President Xi Jinping has described as a new era of constructive strategic stability. Corporate powerhouse delegation. President Trump brought an unusually large and high-profile delegation of American business leaders, describing them as America's best representatives. He personally presented the group to President Xi, pressing for expanded market access and deeper commercial ties between the two economies. Key members of the delegation include Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX; Tim Cook, Apple; Jensen Huang, Nvidia; Larry Fink, BlackRock; Stephen Schwartzman, Blackstone. David Solomon, Goldman Sachs. Jane Fraser, Citigroup. Kelly Ortberg, Boeing. H. Lawrence Culp Jr., GE Aerospace. Cristiano Amon, Qualcomm. Sanjay Mehrotra, Micron Technology. Dina Powell McCormick, Meta Platforms. Michael Miebach, MasterCard. Ryan McInerney, Visa. Brian Sykes, Cargill. Jacob Thazen, Illumina. Jim Anderson, Coherent. Itinerary highlights. The program blends formal diplomacy with cultural engagements in symbolic locations. Great Hall of the People, site of the official bilateral meetings, and Thursday morning's grand welcome ceremony. Tiananmen Square, location of the formal military honor guard reception upon arrival. Temple of Heaven, Thursday afternoon tour of the historic 15th century complex, including the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests, where the leaders reflected on blending cultural tradition with modern cooperation. Forbidden City, Palace Museum, references were made to President Trump's earlier 2017 visit to the landmark. Core discussions and strategic focus. Talks between Presidents Trump and Xi have been characterized as candid yet forward-looking. The central theme is establishing constructive strategic stability, a framework to manage competition, set clear boundaries, and keep differences controllable. Major topics on the agenda. 1. Artificial intelligence. The leaders explored the possibility of red lines and safety guardrails, drawing parallels to Cold War-era nuclear arms control agreements. 2. Taiwan. President Xi reiterated Taiwan as China's first red line. President Trump referenced the recent $11 billion U.S. weapons package to the island, while stressing the need to de-escalate tensions and preserve regional stability. 3. Global conflicts and energy. The war in Iran and its effects on energy markets and the Strait of Hormuz were discussed, with both sides expressing interest in stabilizing international trade routes. 4. Economic and market access. President Trump urged further opening of the Chinese market to U.S. companies, arguing that American innovation and investment could accelerate China's technological and economic progress through mutually beneficial cooperation. The visit continues this evening with a state banquet hosted in Beijing. A final working lunch is planned for Friday before President Trump's departure. This summit represents one of the most significant high-level engagements between the world's two largest economies in recent years, with both political and commercial outcomes closely watched globally. Compiled by Christian Church World News CCWN TV Press House Media. Copyright 2026 CCWN TV Press House Media. All rights reserved.
Target Blog News Media Publications. Episode 3 Global News Briefing Trump-Xi Summit in Beijing. Date May 14, 2026. Location Beijing, China. President Donald Trump is on a pivotal three-day state visit to China, a cornerstone of his second term's foreign policy. He arrived Wednesday evening, May 13, and received a 21-gun salute at the Great Hall of the People. The trip, ending Friday, May 15, aims to steer U.S.-China ties into a new era of constructive strategic stability, as President Xi Jinping described it like riding a massive ship off course. Star-studded U.S. business delegation. Trump brought an elite lineup of American executives, calling them America's best representatives to boost U.S. market access in China. He introduced them personally to Xi. Key members include 1. Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, eyeing manufacturing and tech ties. 2. Tim Cook, Apple, focused on supply chains. 3. Jensen Huang, Nvidia, after talks on iChip exports. 4. Larry Fink, BlackRock, and Stephen Schwartzman, Blackstone, for finance. 5. David Solomon, Goldman Sachs, and Jane Fraser, Citigroup. 6. Kelly Ortberg, Boeing, and 7. H. Lawrence Culp Jr., GE Aerospace, on aviation. 8. Cristiano Amon, Qualcomm, and 9. Sanjay Mehrotra, Micron. 10. Dina Powell McCormick, Meta. 11. Michael Miebach, MasterCard. 12. Ryan McInerney, Visa. 13. Brian Sykes, Cargill, for Agriculture. 14. Jacob Faison, Illumina. 15. Jim Anderson, Coherent. Itinerary highlights. Talks blend diplomacy and symbolism in central Beijing. 1. Great Hall of the People, bilateral meetings and welcome ceremony Thursday morning. 2. Tiananmen Square, arrival honors with military guard. 3. Temple of Heaven, Thursday tour of the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests, blending culture and modern ties. Trump referenced his 2017 Forbidden City visit. Core discussions and outcomes. Trump and Xi held frank, forward-looking talks on constructive strategic stability, keeping rivalry in check while managing divides. Major topics. 1. guardrails, modeled on Cold War arms control. They set red lines for safe development. 2. Taiwan, Xi called it the top red line. Trump noted a $11 billion U.S. arms deal but pushed for de-escalation. 3. Iran war addressed energy shocks and Strait of Hormuz risks for global trade. 4. Trade openness, Trump urged China to welcome U.S. firms, saying American innovation could supercharge mutual growth. Tonight's state banquet precedes Friday's final lunch and departure. Compiled by Christian Church, World News CCW and TV Press Media. Copyright 2026 CCW and TV Press Media. All rights reserved.
Target Blog News Media Publications. Episode 4, Global Briefing, Trump's defining state visit to Beijing. Date, May 14, 2026. Location, Beijing, China. President Donald Trump is undertaking a landmark three-day state visit to China, a centerpiece of his second administration's foreign policy agenda. Touching down in Beijing on May 13, he was welcomed with a 21-gun salute and a grand ceremony at the Great Hall of the People. The visit, running through May 15, is aimed at steering U.S.-China relations into what President Xi Jinping has described as a new era of constructive strategic stability. Corporate powerhouse delegation. Trump's entourage features an extraordinary lineup of American business leaders, introduced personally to Xi as America's best representatives. Their mission to deepen U.S. commercial engagement in China. Key figures include Elon Musk, Tesla and SpaceX chief, central to tech and manufacturing ties. Tim Cook, Apple CEO, focused on supply chain resilience. Jensen Huang, Nvidia CEO, joining amid chip export talks. Larry Fink, BlackRock's leader, representing global finance. Steven Schwartzman, Blackstone co-founder. David Solomon, Goldman Sachs CEO. Jane Fraser, Citigroup CEO. Kelly Ortberg, Boeing CEO, navigating aerospace trade. H. Lawrence Culp Jr., GE Aerospace Chief. Cristiano Amon, Qualcomm CEO. Sanjay Mehrotra, Micron Technology CEO. Dina Powell McCormick, Meta Platforms Vice Chairman. Michael Miebach, MasterCard CEO. Ryan McInerney, Visa CEO. Brian Sykes, Cargill CEO, representing agriculture. Jacob Faison, Illumina CEO. Jim Anderson, Coherent CEO. Diplomatic and cultural highlights. The itinerary blends high-level diplomacy with cultural symbolism. Great Hall of the People, site of official talks and the welcoming ceremony. Tiananmen Square, military honors and ceremonial salute. Temple of Heaven, leaders toured the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests, linking tradition with modern dialogue. Forbidden City, revisiting the historic venue from Trump's 2017 trip. Strategic conversations and outcomes. Talks between Trump and Xi have been described as frank yet forward-looking, anchored in the concept of constructive strategic stability. The framework seeks to manage rivalry while fostering cooperation. Key issues on the table. 1. Artificial intelligence, proposals for red lines to prevent accidents, echoing Cold War-era arms control. 2. Taiwan, Xi reaffirmed Taiwan as China's first red line, while Trump addressed U.S. arms sales and stressed de-escalation. 3. Global conflict, both leaders weighed the war in Iran and its impact on energy and trade routes. 4. Economic access, Trump pressed for greater market openness, arguing U.S. innovation could accelerate China's growth. The visit continues with a state banquet tonight, followed by a final working lunch on May 15 before Trump's departure. Compiled by Christian Church World News CCWN TV Press House Media. Copyright 2026 CCWN TV Press House Media. All rights reserved.
Target Blog News Media Publications. Episode 5, Global News Briefing, Trump and Xi open new chapter in U.S.-China relations during historic Beijing summit. Beijing, China, May 14, 2026. President Donald Trump has commenced a closely watched three-day state visit to the People's Republic of China, signaling one of the most consequential diplomatic engagements of his second presidential term. The visit, which began on Wednesday, May 13, and concludes on Friday, May 15, is widely viewed as an attempt by both Washington and Beijing to stabilize an increasingly competitive geopolitical relationship, while reopening channels for economic cooperation and strategic dialogue. Upon arrival in Beijing, President Trump was welcomed with full state honors, including a 21-gun salute, military ceremonial formations, and an elaborate reception hosted by Chinese President Xi Jinping at the historic Great Hall of the People in central Beijing. Chinese officials described the visit as an effort to steer the relationship between the world's two largest economies toward what President Xi called a new phase of constructive strategic stability. Elite U.S. business leaders joined presidential delegation. Traveling alongside President Trump is one of the largest and most influential corporate delegations ever assembled for a U.S. state visit to China. The administration described the group as a representation of America's industrial, technological, financial, and agricultural leadership, with the president encouraging deeper commercial engagement between American companies and the Chinese market. Among the prominent executives accompanying the president are 1. Elon Musk, representing both the electric vehicle and aerospace sectors through Tesla and SpaceX. 2. Tim Cook, focusing on technology manufacturing partnerships and supply chain stability. 3. Jensen Huang, participating in discussions surrounding advanced artificial intelligence technologies and semiconductor exports. 4. Larry Fink, representing international finance and investment interests. 5. Steven Schwartzman, one of the leading voices in global private equity. 6. David Solomon. 7. Jane Fraser. 8. Kelly Ortberg, engaged in aviation trade and aerospace cooperation talks. 9. H. Lawrence Culp Jr. 10. Cristiano Amon. 11. Sanjay Mehrotra. 12. Dina Powell McCormick. 14. Michael Miebach. 15. Ryan McInerney. 16. Brian Sykes, representing U.S. agricultural exports and food supply interests. 17. Jacob Thazin. 18. Jim Anderson. Chinese and American officials alike described the delegation as a deliberate effort to strengthen economic diplomacy amid ongoing strategic competition between the two powers. Ceremonial and diplomatic highlights across Beijing. The state visit has blended formal diplomacy with carefully curated cultural symbolism, reflecting both nations' attempts to present an atmosphere of stability and mutual respect. 1. Great Hall of the People. The centerpiece of the visit has been the Great Hall of the People, where President Trump and President Xi held extended bilateral discussions, signed preliminary cooperation frameworks, and participated in official state ceremonies. 2. Tiananmen Square. President Trump also participated in a formal military reception near Tiananmen Square, where Chinese honor guards conducted a ceremonial welcome attended by senior government officials and international media. 3. Temple of Heaven. On Thursday afternoon, both leaders toured the historic Temple of Heaven, one of Beijing's most iconic imperial landmarks dating back to the Ming Dynasty. During their visit to the famed Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests, the two presidents reportedly discussed the balance between preserving ancient cultural traditions and advancing modern national development. 4. Forbidden City. The visit has also revived memories of President Trump's notable 2017 tour of the Forbidden City, officially known as the Palace Museum, which Chinese state media referenced repeatedly throughout the summit as a symbol of enduring diplomatic engagement between the two nations. Major strategic discussions between Trump and Xi. Officials from both governments characterized the private discussions between President Trump and President Xi as frank, substantive, and forward-looking. Central to the summit has been the development of a proposed framework labeled Constructive Strategic Stability, intended to manage geopolitical rivalry while preventing direct confrontation. Artificial intelligence and emerging technology. One of the most significant areas of discussion focused on artificial intelligence governance. Both leaders reportedly explored the establishment of international red lines aimed at preventing uncontrolled escalation, cyber instability, and autonomous military risks associated with rapidly advancing technologies. Diplomats familiar with the talks compare the discussions to Cold War-era nuclear arms negotiations, suggesting that Washington and Beijing increasingly view regulation as a matter of global security rather than merely economic competition. Taiwan and regional security. The issue of Taiwan remained one of the summit's most sensitive topics. President Xi reiterated Beijing's position that Taiwan represents a core national interest and the first red line in China's foreign policy posture. President Trump reportedly addressed the recently approved $11 billion U.S. defense package for Taiwan, while simultaneously emphasizing his administration's interest in reducing military tensions across the Indo-Pacific region and preserving regional stability. Iran conflict and global energy markets. Another major focus involved the escalating conflict involving Iran and its implications for global energy supply routes, particularly the Strait of Hormuz. Both leaders discussed concerns over oil market volatility, shipping security, and the broader impact of Middle East instability on international trade and inflation. Trade and economic expansion. Economic cooperation remained at the forefront of the discussions. President Trump urged Chinese authorities to broaden access for American companies, arguing that deeper collaboration with U.S. firms could accelerate innovation, investment, and industrial modernization within China. President Xi, meanwhile, emphasized the importance of mutual respect, balanced trade relationships, and avoiding policies that could destabilize the global economy. State banquet and final day agenda. President Trump is scheduled to attend a formal state banquet hosted by President Xi on the evening of May 14, featuring senior Chinese Communist Party officials, diplomats, and members of the visiting American delegation. The visit will conclude on Friday, May 15, with a final working luncheon and additional closed-door discussions before President Trump departs Beijing for Washington. Analysts around the world are closely monitoring the summit, viewing it as a defining moment that could shape the future trajectory of U.S.-China relations, global trade dynamics, technological competition, and international security throughout the remainder of the decade. Compiled by Christian Church World News CCWN TV Press Media. Copyright 2026 CCWN TV Press Media. All rights reserved.
Target Blog News Media Publications. Episode 6 Global News Briefing President Trump's landmark state visit to Beijing. Date May 14, 2026. Location Beijing, China. President Donald Trump is currently in the midst of a high-stakes, three-day state visit to China, marking a pivotal moment in his second administration's foreign policy. Arriving in Beijing on Wednesday evening, May 13, the president was greeted by a 21-gun salute and a vibrant welcome ceremony at the Great Hall of the People. The visit, which is scheduled to conclude on Friday, May 15, is designed to reset the giant ship of U.S.-China relations toward what President Xi Jinping has termed a new era of constructive strategic stability. The corporate delegation, America's best representatives. Accompanying the president is an unprecedented who's who of American industry. President Trump personally introduced this delegation to President Xi, urging for a significant expansion of U.S. business involvement in the Chinese market. The delegation includes Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, who remains a central figure in U.S.-China manufacturing and tech synergy. Tim Cook, CEO of Apple Inc., focusing on maintaining the delicate balance of supply chains and market access. Jensen Huang, CEO of Invidion, who joined the trip following last-minute discussions regarding high-performance iChip exports. Larry Fink, Chairman and CEO of BlackRock, representing the interests of global finance and investment. Stephen Schwarzman, Chairman, CEO, and co-founder of Blackstone. David Solomon, Chairman and CEO of Goldman Sachs. Jane Fraser, CEO of Citigroup. Kelly Ortberg, CEO of Boeing, seeking to navigate aerospace trade and safety standards. H. Lawrence Culp Jr., Chairman and CEO of GE Aerospace. Cristiano Amon, President and CEO of Qualcomm. Sanjay Mehrotra, President and CEO of Micron Technology. Dina Powell McCormick, President and Vice Chairman of Meta Platforms. Michael Miebach, CEO of MasterCard. Ryan McInerney, CEO of Visa. Brian Sykes, Chairman and CEO of Cargill, representing the vital agriculture sector. Jacob Thaysen, CEO of Illumina. Jim Anderson, CEO of Coherent. Itinerary and key locations. The visit is centered in the heart of the Chinese capital, blending formal diplomacy with cultural symbolism. The Great Hall of the People, the venue for official bilateral talks and the grand welcome ceremony on Thursday morning. Tiananmen Square, where the president received a full military honor guard and a ceremonial salute upon arrival. The Temple of Heaven, on Thursday afternoon, the two leaders toured this 15th-century religious complex. They visited the Hall of Prayer for Good Harvests, where they discussed the integration of traditional culture and modern harmony. The Forbidden City Palace Museum references were made during the trip to the president's previous historic 2017 visit to this landmark. Conversational discussions and strategic outcomes. The dialogue between President Trump and President Xi has been described as both candid and visionary. The core of their discussion revolved around constructive strategic stability, a framework intended to ensure that competition between the two superpowers remains within proper limits while fostering manageable differences. Key topics included: 1. Artificial intelligence. In a move likened to the nuclear arms control talks of the Cold War, the leaders discussed establishing red lines to prevent catastrophic accidents and ensure global safety standards for emerging technology. 2. The Taiwan question. President Xi emphasized that Taiwan remains the first red line that cannot be crossed. In response, President Trump addressed the $11 billion U.S. weapons package authorized for the island, while expressing a desire to reduce tensions and maintain regional peace. 3. Global conflict, the ongoing war in Iran and its impact on global energy markets and the Strait of Hormuz loomed large over the discussions, with both leaders seeking ways to stabilize international trade. 4. Economic access. President Trump explicitly asked President Xi to open up China further for U.S. firms, arguing that American brilliance could help elevate China's development to higher levels through mutual cooperation. The president will attend a state banquet this evening, May 14, followed by a final working lunch on Friday before his departure. Compiled by Christian Church World News CCWN TV Press House Media. Copyright 2026 CCWN TV Press House Media. All rights reserved.